The year 1947 marked the end of the British Empire's reign over India. After centuries of colonial rule, India was about to gain its hard-fought independence. However, this momentous occasion was not a simple handover of power. The road to independence was paved with political turmoil and a deeply divided nation. World War II had significantly weakened Britain's global standing. The empire, once a symbol of immense power, was crumbling. In India, the Quit India movement, led by Mahatma Gandhi's non-violent resistance, had ignited nationalistic fervour.
The British government realized that holding on to India was no longer feasible.
Yet the question of how this departure would unfold remained a complex issue. As the British Empire waned, the question of India's future loomed large. The once mighty empire was now grappling with the realities of a post-war world, and the demand for independence in its colonies was becoming impossible to ignore. Two dominant political forces emerged, each with their own vision for an independent India. The Indian National Congress and the Muslim League were at the forefront, representing different aspirations and concerns of the Indian populace. On one side stood the Indian National Congress, led by Jawaharlal Nehru, advocating for a unified and secular India. Nehru's vision was of a nation where all communities could coexist harmoniously, free from colonial rule.
On the other side was the Muslim League, led by Muhammad Ali Jinnah. Jinnah, a staunch advocate for the rights of Muslims in India, believed that their interests would be best served in a separate state. Jinnah, unconvinced by the Congress's promises, championed the idea of a separate Muslim state, Pakistan. He argued that Muslims needed their own homeland to protect their cultural and religious identity.
The 1946 elections were pivotal. They were a litmus test for the competing visions of India's future, and the results would shape the destiny of the subcontinent. While the Congress party secured a majority, their victory was not absolute. The results revealed deep fissures within the Indian society. The Muslim League's success in Muslim-majority provinces underscored the growing religious divide. It was clear that many Muslims felt alienated and sought assurance for their future. The election results highlighted the deep-seated anxieties within the Muslim population. Their overwhelming support for the Muslim League was a clear signal of their desire for a separate identity. The cabinet mission's proposal for a federal structure failed to bridge the chasm of distrust between the Congress and the Muslim League. Despite numerous negotiations, the two sides could not find common ground. With negotiations failing, the spectre of communal violence loomed large. The seeds of division had been sown, and the path to independence was fraught with peril and uncertainty. Jinnah, frustrated by the lack of progress, issued a call for direct action on August 16, 1946. This call tragically spiraled into one of the darkest chapters in the history of the Indian subcontinent. Direct Action Day unleashed a wave of communal violence, leaving thousands dead and many more displaced. Calcutta became the epicenter of this horrific violence. The streets were transformed into scenes of carnage and despair. The events of Direct Action Day shattered the fragile peace, replaced by fear and mistrust. The need for a partition plan became paramount to avert a full-scale civil war. In the aftermath of Direct Action Day, the call for a separate Muslim state grew stronger. The dream of a united India was fading fast. Lord Mountbatten arrived in Delhi in March 1947 to oversee the final transition of power. Mountbatten, under pressure to expedite the process, decided on a course of action with far-reaching consequences. On June 3, 1947, Mountbatten announced the Partition Plan. The plan aimed to divide the nation along religious lines. The task of demarcating the new borders was entrusted to Sir Cyril Radcliffe. The Radcliffe Line, hastily drawn, led to widespread displacement. The Radcliffe Line was more than just a border on a map. It was a line that would forever change the lives of millions. It represented a deep division of communities, religions, and ways of life. The line cut through the heart of a subcontinent that had for centuries been a mosaic of diverse cultures and traditions. The hastily drawn lines cut through ancient villages, separated families, and ignited a mass exodus. People who had lived together for generations found themselves on opposite sides of an arbitrary boundary. The Partition Plan, flawed from its inception, was implemented with catastrophic consequences. The British, eager to exit, paid little heed to the human cost. The speed of execution and lack of planning amplified the chaos and suffering. Entire communities were uprooted overnight, leading to one of the largest migrations in human history. As the reality of partition sunk in, panic and fear gripped millions. People fled their homes with whatever they could carry, leaving behind memories and possessions. Muslims in Hindu-majority areas and Hindus and Sikhs in areas to become Pakistan faced a similar predicament. They were forced to leave their ancestral homes in search of safety. The sense of belonging was shattered overnight. Communities that had coexisted peacefully were now torn apart by suspicion and violence. The partition of India was a vivisection of a nation, tearing apart the fabric of society. The violence that ensued left deep scars that are still felt today. Refugees crammed onto overcrowded trains during the partition of India. These journeys were fraught with danger as people risked everything to reach what they hoped would be a safer place. The partition of India triggered one of the largest mass migrations in human history. An estimated 14 million people were uprooted from their homes. It was a mass exodus fueled by fear and desperation.
The roads to the new borders were choked with humanity. Families carrying their meager possessions trudged for miles under the scorching sun. The journey was fraught with danger as communal violence escalated.
Trains meant to transport people to safety became overcrowded death traps. Many died of starvation, dehydration, or disease.
The partition of India was a humanitarian catastrophe.
Refugees in a makeshift camp following the partition of India. 77 years have passed since the events of 1947, yet the legacy of partition continues to cast a long shadow. The division of British India into two separate nations, India and Pakistan, was not just a political maneuver but a seismic event that altered the lives of millions. The echoes of that fateful year still resonate in the hearts and minds of people across the subcontinent. The trauma of those times serves as a stark reminder of the human cost of division. Families were torn apart, homes were abandoned, and entire communities were uprooted. The mass migration that ensued was one of the largest in human history, with an estimated 15 million people displaced. The partition of India was a fracturing of a shared history, culture, and identity. Before the division, Hindus, Muslims, Sikhs, and others lived side by side, sharing festivals, traditions, and a common heritage. The partition disrupted this harmony, creating a chasm that seemed insurmountable. The violence left an indelible mark on the region. Riots, massacres, and brutalities on both sides claimed countless lives. The memories of these atrocities are etched into the collective consciousness of the people, serving as a grim reminder of the horrors of division. The wounds of the past continue to fester, often exploited for political gain. Politicians and leaders have at times used the history of partition to stoke nationalist sentiments and deepen divisions for their own agendas. The arbitrary borders drawn by the Radcliffe Line remain a source of contention. These hastily drawn lines did not account for the complex tapestry of communities and cultures that existed, leading to disputes and conflicts that persist to this day. Yet, amidst the legacy of pain, there is hope. Efforts for peace and reconciliation have been ongoing, with individuals and organizations working tirelessly to bridge the gap. Cultural exchanges, dialogues, and joint initiatives aim to heal the wounds and foster a sense of unity. The shared history and cultural ties between India and Pakistan cannot be erased by political borders. Families separated by the partition have found ways to reconnect, and artists from both nations collaborate to celebrate their common heritage. The people of both nations are increasingly recognizing the futility of hostility. The younger generation in particular is pushing for a future where peace and cooperation replace animosity and conflict. The Wagah border ceremony is a symbol of both the division and the shared heritage of India and Pakistan. It stands as a daily reminder of the past, but also as a beacon of hope for a future where the two nations can coexist peacefully.